Hello and welcome to the GD Politics Podcast. I'm Galen Druk. In our topsy-turvy political world, last Friday stood out as one for the books. In the afternoon, President Trump seemed to embrace New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani, complimenting his underdog victory, saying he thinks he's going to do some things that are going to be really great, and even smilingly saying that it's okay if Mamdani calls him a fascist. Just hours later, one of Trump's formerly fiercest defenders, Marjorie Taylor Greene, announced that she's resigning from Congress in the new year after disagreements with Trump led him to brand her as Marjorie Taylor Greene and threaten support for a primary opponent against her. I still sort of can't believe the two paragraphs I just read, but here we are. And for our purposes, I guess, does any of this mean anything for our politics beyond the fact that we have one high variance president? Today, we're also going to check in on the state of gerrymandering around the country after a federal panel struck down Texas's new map that would have likely added 5 seats to Republicans' ranks in the House. If it stands, in a turn of fate, Democrats could end up being the net winners of the mid-decade redistricting spat. That decision now heads to the Supreme Court. And finally, happy Thanksgiving week. Have you heard of the pre-Thanksgiving dinner cousin walk? It's apparently when the younger members of the family go get stoned before sitting down for turkey. The idea has become popularized online, and the Wall Street Journal even called it a full-blown commercial holiday, with dispensaries reporting the second biggest sales of the year for Green Wednesday, of course, second to 420. But is this all coming at a time when Americans are turning against marijuana? Here with me to discuss it all are two dear friends of the podcast, head of research at 50 Plus One, Mary Radcliffe. Welcome to the podcast. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, Galen. Great to be here.
It's great to have you. And also here with us is Nathaniel Rakich. Nathaniel, happy Thanksgiving and congrats on the new job. Tell us about it.
Thanks, Galen. Yeah, so I am the new managing editor at VoteBeat, which is a nonprofit news site that covers like election administration and voting access issues. I just started a couple of weeks ago, and there's already been a lot of fun issues like ballots being thrown into question in a mayoral race in Michigan, and of course all of these redistricting things going on that we are going to talk about. So it's a really interesting and I think important time to be covering issues of voting and democracy.
Yeah, Nathaniel, when I heard you got this job, I was very excited because I could hardly think of a more fitting job, and also a job that tackles such an important thing in our politics today. So again, congrats, and we're going to be tracking all your successes there. In the meantime, let's talk about something that feels not quite so serious, but also maybe equally, if not more, perplexing, which is the Marjorie Taylor Greene Mamdani mishmash of last Friday. So after more than a decade, the analysis of Trump being different in person than online and being highly influenced by in-person flattery, like that whole analysis has become a little bit tired. But I'm curious if there is any other way to describe what we saw between Trump and Mamdani on Friday, because I'm just going to quote from the New York Times here. Mr. Trump had falsely claimed that Mr. Mamdani, a naturalized U.S. citizen, might be here illegally and had threatened to have him arrested. He had demonized him as a communist who would drive his beloved hometown into the gutter. But then, in person, they couldn't have been more smiley. Nathaniel, do you want to take the first crack at trying to explain this?
Sure. I mean, I do kind of think it is mostly as simple as that. I think that on Trump's part, he is at his core like a businessman and a schmoozer and a New Yorker, specifically a Queens man, just like Zohran Mamdani. And I think that he really likes glad handing. And Mamdani is, as we all figured out, he's very telegenic. He's very charming in person. And I think that it makes total sense that two people who are both quite charismatic and are a bit of a kind of backslapping type, that they would get along famously. And I think obviously there's going to be plenty of time for them to do their anti-Trump, anti-Mamdani shtick kind of to their respective bases. But I think that's kind of the point, is that it is somewhat, it's a bit somewhat performative for both of them. Trump is a useful foil for Mamdani, and Mamdani is a useful foil for Trump, but they both kind of understand that like this is the game, and when they get together, they're like, yeah, we can get along, like it's not personal. And yeah, I think that's the simplest explanation.
So you don't think this is the final word? You're still expecting quite a bit of beefing in the coming years?
Oh yeah, of course. Like, and it'll go back and forth, right? The only constant here is change. With certainly with Trump, I guess we'll find out with Mamdani, but he has gone back and forth on liking some people and then disliking them and then liking them again, and I think a lot of that probably does have to do with things like the in-person interaction versus if he's standing in front of a crowd of people wearing MAGA hats and Mamdani is thousands of miles away. It's easy to rail against him as a communist and a jihadist, but yeah, they will definitely butt heads. It is not going to be an era of good feelings, where New York City government and the federal government get along great. But I also think that, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are never going to be charming to each other again either.
It sounded like from the reporting, Mamdani came into that meeting like ready to talk about ways they can work together rather than being at each other's throats. So, for example, on immigration, right? Like we've seen mayors of other cities push back really hard against the Trump administration's efforts to deport undocumented um, immigrants. But like what Mamdani did is came into the meeting and said, hey, here's where in New York state law we can work together to deal with this problem, to like help find criminals, whatever. So instead of coming in and being like, I'm going to stand against you in every possible way, Mamdani came in with a compromise, right? So like there's ways that I think Mamdani approached this perhaps differently than some of the other like firebrands we've seen on the left, which may also have contributed to some of their getting along.
Yeah, I mean, I found the dynamic interesting because it's kind of clear what the political calculations for Mamdani are. Trump could make his life as mayor of New York City much, much harder if he wanted to, from, keeping federal funding from the city, deploying the National Guard, unrest related to ICE arrests. And, I'll just say for my part, I live in New York City. I'm surrounded by people from across the political spectrum, but plenty of anti-Trump sentiment. And for the most part, people were very happy with how that meeting went and enthusiastic and somewhat relieved at seeing them get along, because I think there has been the sense that Trump could really fuck things up for the city. But it's less clear to me what Trump's political calculations are. And you already said, Nathaniel, maybe it's just that he likes schmoozing and was charmed by Zohran Mamdani. But he is, at the same time, when the matter calls for it, can be a fierce tactician when it comes to politics and isn't necessarily afraid of ruffling feathers, even in person. Like, I would say Vladimir Zelensky is one prime example of that, even in the Oval Office. And so I'm curious, is there any underlying political motivation here for Trump to get along with somebody like Zohran Mamdani on the issue of affordability, or just a general populist sense, or, even from the 4D chess perspective, change the story from the Epstein files, or from a showman's perspective, keep the television show engaging so that no matter what, at least you're still in charge of the narrative? Or like, is it really as simple as like charming 34-year-old millennial comes into the Oval Office, shakes Trump's hand and says, hey, a lot of the people who voted for you in 2024 also voted for me, and I also want to make New York City safe, and there are some ways where we can work with you on ICE, but otherwise I want to make everything affordable. And he said, oh my God, I love you, and you can even call me a fascist if you want to.
Yeah, I kind of think it is that simple.
Yeah. I mean, what I think is interesting about this is that, like, regardless of how people in New York feel, Mamdani is not particularly popular nationally.